Good afternoon and welcome to the Cloud Design Box podcast. Today we're talking Search Coach, and with me today is Emma Gray, who's the product manager for Search Coach at Microsoft. Hi, Emma.
Hey Darren, thank you so much for having me. Thanks for
Hey,
staying late.
it's a pleasure. It's not that late here, not really. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and how did you end up working on Search Coach at Microsoft?
That's an excellent question, and there was a lot of serendipity that actually went into this one. So my background is in engineering and physics, but I was actually raised by journalists. So my dad was a radio host all the way up until he retired, and my mom went from war journalism to lifestyle, and now she has her own travel magazine. So growing up, journalistic integrity was actually like something that came up in conversations around the dinner table, and was always just in the background throughout most of my life. And I ended up with the engineering route. I almost became a teacher, didn't. And somehow, with all of those different variables, landed on the Microsoft education team working on a product for information literacy, um, of which journalistic integrity is a really important component. So pretty
Check
cool that I ended up here.
check the facts, right? It's all about checking the facts and making sure you're right when you say things.
And
Yeah.
admitting when you're wrong when you are. I think having corrections policies, making those kinds of things really, really clear is critical.
And that's the scientific method as well, isn't it? You think something's a fact until some new evidence comes up and suddenly
You've got
Pluto's
it.
not a planet anymore. And it's
Yeah. The phrase
so
I've heard, what is it? Strong convictions loosely held. This is one of the best ways to move through the world. It's one of the best ways to ingest information and to produce it. So that's pretty solid.
that sounds like a good way to roll to me. Um, so talking about the search coach, from the point of view now, if I were, because there are all kinds of things and features and strategies that are competing for attention within our
Mhm.
schools. And if you're a senior leader, a head teacher, a principal, a curriculum leader, whatever, um, what what would be the reason that students in your school would be better off using Search Coach? What's the real benefit of using Search Coach within schools?
That's a really good question. So when this project got started, we talked to hundreds of teachers, and the sentiment was, we know that this is important. We know that the way that the world is changing, the information ecosystem out there is getting more and more complex. We've got echo chambers, we've got social media algorithms, we've got AI, and it's so critical that we're preparing people for the future. It's a future ready skill in the same way that public speaking might be. But at the same time, it's very difficult outside of maybe your typical library class or a history class, maybe where you'd cover this, to build it into your classroom. And so that's where Search Coach really sits. It's for educators who recognize this is important, and that's most of the people we've spoken to, and who want a way to really easily weave it into any class that they might be teaching. So we've worked with English teachers, we've worked with science teachers, and what we found is that this is a tool that fits really well into those environments that also accrues value towards learning outcomes and information literacy. So that's the goal really, was a tool that doesn't impose itself onto existing class priorities, but that helps you meet those goals nonetheless, if that makes sense.
It does. So, I mean, in some ways, would it be akin to kind of having a calculator available in a maths class or a science class? You don't
Yeah,
always use it because sometimes you need to do the working out yourself, but it's
got it.
there if you need it as a tool that you can potentially use.
Totally. And the other two things that come to mind, really, AI literacy is a buzzword that's been tossed around a lot lately. It
Yeah.
has many definitions, but at the foundation, it has to do with understanding how to use these new tools, how to ask really good questions, and how to think really critically about the outputs. And and those are patterns we're teaching in Search Coach and Search Progress, especially Search Progress, when you can see the query that went into you finding the result and you're immediately justifying why you chose to save it. This is like going to the gym, the metacognitive gym, to learn how to ask more thoughtful questions and to analyze what comes out the other side of it.
So build up your mental muscles and
You've
don't
got
let
it.
yourself
Yep.
get flabby in your thinking because that can happen at a certain age.
And the
But yeah,
hope,
keep tight on that and work those muscles,
you've got
making
it.
sure that everything that you say or think is valid, that you can justify it. And if somebody challenges you on it, you don't just say, yeah, well, a guy told me, or I saw this on Facebook, or whatever. You can actually double check that those things are true,
It's
for
true.
yourself.
And there's a well-being piece as well. It's not even just in your communication with other people. It's the fact that studies are showing us that kids with higher media literacies, which is another term very overlapping with information literacy, higher skills in that area are mentally more resilient and have higher well-being scores. Because if you think of someone scrolling down a video feed on TikTok or
Yeah.
on Instagram or anything else, critical thinking, that information literacy bubble that you can build for yourself, is almost a buffer between you and these waves of information coming at you any day. And so that's another really powerful piece of this is what we're hoping to build for people, is that pause, reflect before moving forward with something that aligns with a lot of the research out there about well-being beyond, what it can do to help you become a better citizen or community member or anything else, research or academic.
Yeah, because things are getting faster, right? That's what I've found, is that everything is getting faster and faster. The television that we watch, the films coming through, they make too many films now. You can't watch them all.
Exactly.
You binge watch if you got those streaming services. You don't just watch something and wait for a week and look forward to the next. In my case, look forward to the next episode of Doctor Who in a week's time. It just comes now and you binge it. There's no
Hmm.
there's no space in between things, and I think
Yeah,
sometimes slowing things down, taking a moment to really think about what's happening, think about what you're thinking, that kind of metacognition. I was trying not to say it, but it is
there
thinking
you
about
go.
the thinking that you're doing,
You've got
almost
it.
being another person looking in on yourself, going, what are you thinking there, Darren? What are you thinking that
Exactly.
for? That doesn't sound right to me. Having these
Yep.
conversations with yourself.
Yep.
So,
100%.
so these are all the things we're thinking. So when we look at Search Coach, it's not just, oh, it's an app, great, another app. It's more than that. It's kind of training you, especially students, because they're young people, and this is the time when their brains are developing, their thought patterns are developing.
Yep.
That choice of whether I just rush into an answer, or a decision or a political opinion, or whether I'm actually going to slow down and go, what's really happening here? What that that can be taught as
Yeah.
part of this tool.
A hundred
So
percent.
with that in mind, do you want to show us a little bit
Oh,
about
you
how it
betcha.
looks and what it does?
Yeah, yeah, let's do it. So the one thing I'll note as well while I open this up is that we didn't come up with the strategy for Search Coach by ourselves. This is something that's come out of the Stanford Research Labs, the Stanford History Education Group. Mike Caulfield is another researcher, and he just published a book with Dr. Sam Weinberg that I would highly recommend. They didn't pay me to say that, but Verified is a new book that's out about new navigating information online. Here, give me one moment.
And I tell you what, I've spoken to a lot of partners recently who are involved in, things like digital assessment and all. There's a lot of great stuff coming out of Stanford. If you're not working with Stanford,
Yeah, there you go. So we actually have Search Progress and Search Coach curriculum coming out with the Stanford spinoff group, the Digital Inquiry Group, that's coming out in private preview in April, and then again in the fall. This is something I wanted to show you before I dive in, something to keep in mind before I show you the product. When we're interacting with AI tools, AI literacy is something we're talking about a lot these days. There's a pretty basic flow. You find the tool, maybe you have a couple of foundational understanding, sort of fun facts in your head around how AI works. But at the end of the day, you're asking a good question and you're interpreting the output. And
yeah,
appropriate interpretation is a really important concept. Am I doing this for creative reasons? Am I doing it for research? The level of factual importance between those things can differ. And I mean, this was my way of conceptualizing it. We can do both parts better, and it's not all that different when we're using search engines. So
right.
you can thoughtfully ask the question, you can appropriately interpret the output, and Search Progress and Coach live kind of right in the middle there. Now we're thinking about that from an AI literacy standpoint as well. Yeah, Search Coach. I'll go through a click through just really quickly for people who aren't familiar with what it looks like. Search Coach is the one that stands alone in the Tab app in your Teams class, and then Search Progress is attached to an assignment. It has a couple of extra features that I'll show you. So standalone means it can be accessed anytime. As a teacher, you install it at the top of your team's class. And what you can see here is it kind of looks like a search engine with training wheels. So as we go on through, we see search tips show up. These are things that will respond based on the type of query that you put in. Not sure if you've tried this one, but if you Google search, "Are cats better than dogs?" and then again, "Are dogs better than cats?" you'll end up with completely conflicting results. The results will actually bias themselves towards the way that you've asked the question, even though you don't feel necessarily like you've changed the question at all. And so simple things like that are things that we know are quirks of how search engines work. We catch those search patterns, the query patterns, and surface tips accordingly. As you go on through, we can see we've got NewsGuard ratings as well. So this is someone that Microsoft has partnered with as a company to assess different news publishing sites based on their adherence to journalistic integrity standards. It's not bad site, good site. It's privately funded site. That's good to know. I'm not going to know who's investing in this information being produced. And that's just something else to know as I navigate it.
So this isn't about good and evil. This is about
not at all.
accurate in it. So it could be that you're on a website of an evil corporation, but what they're saying happens to be true.
And they have a good corrections policy, and they label advertisements well, and they really differ between opinion and news on their news site. And so the co-CEOs of NewsGuard actually come from different sort of political bents in America, and they came together. And this is something to note, like the world's really divided right now, but the one thing that we appear to be able to agree on is the importance of good information. And we're seeing that in bipartisan and nonpartisan legislation around the world. Information literacy, media literacy, those are things that people of all political bents are pushing more and more towards investing in right now. So that's, of all the things, this is the thing that we could all agree on. I think that's kind of beautiful.
And I think maybe, politically, whatever your political leaning, if you can have a good conversation, if you and I can disagree about something, but we know that both of us are bringing genuine facts to the table, and then we're using those facts in our argument, but at least we're both sure that everything that we're saying is not completely made up. That allows us to have a kind discourse between ourselves.
Kind, respectful. It's Debate Club 101. You need shared axioms at the beginning, right? If both people are coming from a solid information literacy foundation, then you can have productive discourse. And that's a really special thing. Disagreement's beautiful. It's something I heard someone say recently. And it really can be when the goal is to find what is closest to, the best answer for the time being. So we can click on through here. I'll fly through this pretty quickly. We've got these filter buttons. And what these do is they actually add syntax to your query that you can use in any search engine. So you can do it in your Googles and your Bings. And in this case, we're filtering now by sites that are academic in the UK. And we can see a little description here. Now, if you're anywhere else in the world, you can edit in class settings and choose what institutional domains you would like to surface. And that makes this a lot more applicable around the world. But you can dig on through here, and we can see as well we've got filter buttons for all sorts of different things. We've got Boolean operators. It's kind of like a cheat sheet, but these are all things you can do in normal search engines. It's just making them more available to people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll spin along here. What happens when we put this in an assignment? Actually, first, what happens when a teacher wants to know how their students are using Search Coach? So we navigate over to the Assignments tab, and you'll see this beautiful little report show up. Now, this is something that I've spoken to some pretty super teachers about how they're using this right now. But what you can see is that in the insights, we're getting all sorts of time-boxed data. And so teachers will set this little time window to last 24 hours. And then they'll host a Search Coach session in class where students are researching something for their next history essay or whatever else it might be. And then at the end of class, they have a discussion about why are these the sites that were shown the most versus visited the most? And what keywords are we using to try to figure out what the answers are to the questions we're asking? In this case, it's all about space.
Just to understand the context here, Emma, this is Search Coach.
This is Search Coach.
So we haven't even put this. We haven't embedded this inside an assignment, but it's still working in the scope of a class team. I am a teacher, and I've got my 30-odd kids in the same team as me. And just the fact that I've added that app as a tab in the team, all the activity is related and appropriate and associated with that team. And when I look at the class insights, those
Yep.
insights come from that activity. So this is like somebody, a third party, kind of wandering into an actual classroom and just having a look at the activities and the conversations that the students are doing, and going, yeah, they're really interested in space and astronauts, aren't they?
Well, I should note when you say third party, all this data lives on the tenant. No one at Microsoft
Yeah,
can see what your class is doing, but you can in real time. So you've got a list of students and the number of times they're searching and who's only opening the first result. And if someone's not engaging in that class activity, you'll see them at the bottom of the list. They've done no searches. Maybe they've done one or two. And maybe if you want to approach that kid and see why they're not so engaged in what's going on, you could even just shoot them a Teams message. So it's extra subtle. Can I help you? Are you stuck? Whatever else is going on. It's a really
yeah,
light touch way to touch on engagement. And then at the end, kids love typing all sorts of things into the search query box, so it shows up in the word cloud. But that's another really fun thing to show up, and it creates a launching point for future discussion. And that's what we try to do with insights often. Is the teacher might know, maybe I didn't ask the question the right way because they were searching like this.
yeah.
And
And
so
that's
you
the
can use
best
to reflect
teaching,
on your
right?
lesson. Exactly, right? It's a formative assessment tool as much as it is anything else.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always found that, you teach something, you think that was a brilliant lesson, that was great, that went so well, and then you
Hmm.
sort of try and assess it a bit at the end, and you'd be like, oh no, they all got it completely wrong,
It
you
didn't
know,
land. Yeah.
just completely the wrong way. Like I thought I knew how to teach. I used to teach English, right? So abroad, so it was like, what do you do with the apostrophe? So, well, it's a possessive, so you put the apostrophe, oh, except for it's,
Hmm.
when it means like his or hers, and
Yep.
and you'd completely teach it wrong, and you wouldn't know to the end. So formative assessment within this. And would you do that in the classroom? Would you have the kids kind of, assuming they've got devices and they can all hop on and do this, would you have them do this midway through a lesson, or would
Some
this be some
educators do.
homework?
It could be either. But of course, Search Coach came out first before Search Progress did.
Yeah,
Teachers were saying, go use Search Coach for your homework. And then they were looking at, okay, well, I guess the assignment's been out for a week, so I'm going to change this little time box to the last 7 days, and I'm going to try to glean insights from this. But it didn't quite work for homework, which is why Search Progress came along. So I can give you a
right.
super high level overview of this one here.
Yes, please.
But this is about building it into assignments, and this was the natural next step. It matches the reading coach in progress kind of idea as
Yeah,
well. So we've got this framework we're building out with the learning accelerators, but also we needed to attach it to an assignment. So it wasn't just the time box, it was like a topic box as well. And so basic assignments flow. This is probably familiar with most of the people here. You create an assignment like an empty box, then all your students fill out their own version of the box and hand it back in. And and in this case, if I'm a teacher, it shows up with the learning accelerators button. Math progress and speaker progress are coming soon, so we'll have two more. But you go on through, and what you'll notice is that you've got Search Coach on the left. If you're a teacher who has never played with it before, this is a nice thing to do. And you've got all kinds of settings on the right. So how many sources do you want your students to find at a minimum? What style of references would you like them to include? So we've just introduced references to Search Coach or to Search Progress, which is really exciting. It's APA to start. And as people get louder and louder about wanting the other ones, we're going to build those out too. And reflections and explanations. This is the really powerful part of Search Progress. So once I'm happy with all the words there, I can go on back, I assign it to the class, and then when a student is in the app, so you go to your typical assignment here. 1 second. Ta-da! I'm a student. I can see Search Progress attached to my assignment here. You get this beautiful sidebar that has all of your assignment instructions. And once you've done your search, you found a site that you like, you choose to add it, something really special happens. And I'll zoom in here so you can see it. This is the metacognitive moment. You could talk to this as be some kind of a sidebar. These are the search terms that got me to this source. There's the source I saved, and that's my place where I describe why I saved it. So it's asking me in the moment right away, why was this source worth saving? And we've had educators sending us pictures in saying, this was my kid at the beginning of their first Search Progress assignment. It was like one sentence. And at the end, they're writing paragraphs on paragraphs of why this source is worth engaging with and why they chose it for next week's assignment or whatever else. And that just shows the level of reflection and maturity that can grow over time. And we're actually going to run a
yeah,
study with the Stanford spin-off group, the Digital Inquiry Group, in the fall to measure the impacts of Search, Coach, and Progress on information literacy. So stay tuned for that one.
And the change that can happen as well, isn't it? So we're back at the
Exactly.
gym, aren't we? We're back in the gym,
Exactly. We're
and
at the
these students
metacognitive
are
gym.
learning to think about what they're thinking about.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's just that little moment over and over and over again that makes all the difference. And so we've got citations or references, depending on what you want to call them, wherever you are in the world. We've got the space for the reflection at the end, which is also so important. So you can see here the student has a summary towards the end of how many searches they did, how many sources they saved. That overall reflection question, look at everything you did. This is even bigger than the source level metacognition, right? You take a look at every search you did. Some of them worked out better than others. Why is that? Now you're thinking about how you're doing your research, and you're reflecting on that too. Now teachers have total control over the reflection prompt, but that's something that's pretty powerful in itself. And of course we've got insights for that too, but maybe that's another episode.
Yeah. And as a well, we'll have you back for that. But as a teacher, you could have a little mini lesson on this, couldn't you? You could say, right, everybody, you've all done a search, and you've all seen what searches came up with, and you can see that some were more successful than others, and they got you. So you could then set that as a piece of work, get together, in your tables and talk about it, and then they could feed back to the whole class to say, well, the reason I think this search worked really well was because X, Y, and Z, and the reason this search didn't work was because of this. I hit a wall with it. And now they're sharing. So it's one of those classic jigsaw activities. They're sharing as well the things that they learned while they were learning about how they think.
100%. And the next logical question is, okay, I've done my research. What was I doing that research for? Was it for a lab report? Was it for a presentation or an essay? And so what we've done is we've added this copy as button where you can copy it as a list of your justifications and the queries that got you there and the sources that you picked, or you can copy it as a formatted citation list, which you can then bring in to the next thing. And so this is where it doesn't need to be a lesson about searching. It could be, you're going to have to do research for your essay anyways. Why not track the research that you do so that if you did incredible research, but you flopped on the essay, maybe you get part marks for your process. And this is about emphasis on the process over the product and making it easier for educators to do that if they want to shift that focus. So I think that's kind of cool too. Show your workings. It's like show your work in a math problem. It's exactly that, except for research. And it could be anything.
And
English,
it is
science.
Difficult. And obviously you get to a certain point, you get to a certain level of education and kind of, you're doing like literature reviews and it becomes second nature doing all that kind of thing. But if we're talking about younger students, even, perhaps even elementary school, primary school students here, they might need to do those things as well. And if you can get that early, this idea that you don't just go and write stuff and kind of almost make it up. Well, I did. I said, I think this about Moliere. It's like, no, you can't say that. But I'm right. You might be right, but you have to you have to find somebody else who said it first. And I was like, really? But I've read the book. No, that's not how it works. You have to find, because the reason that we progress as a society is that we build on top of the shoulders of giants, people that have been there before. So you can't just turn up and go, I'm going to do some physics today. No, you have to look at what other people have done in physics over the years. You look at this opinion about that. You look, you might go, string theory. I take some string theory. I bring that in. So, quantum stuff. You've got to look at all that stuff, bring it together, show that you've done the reading, show that you've done the work, and then when you eventually come up with your conclusion, it's much more compelling because the person reading it thinks this person's done some research. If you're just reading science fiction work, the best science fiction writers for me, I'm into that, are the ones that you can see they've done the work.
Yeah, they've packaged together different historical events in a futuristic land with lasers and whatever else is going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what you're saying makes perfect sense because it comes back to the importance of the primary and the secondary resources. And it's a conversation we had with the Digital Inquiry Group not too long ago, is that even with AI, something I heard some educators say, and I think this is clever, is, we don't cite Wikipedia. we cite what Wikipedia cites, right? It's a really good collector of information,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to cite what Wikipedia says. I'm going to cite what Wikipedia cites. I'm going to try to get to that lowest order source if I can. And AI is inevitably going to be collecting sources. You think about using Copilot and the little links that it gives you, right? You're probably, if you're doing research, you're probably not going to cite Copilot. You're going to cite what Copilot cites. And so the ability to lateral read on the sources that Copilot surfaces or any other AI tool, right? Those are the search coach skills that we're teaching. And those are skills that aren't going away anytime soon, even if the way that we do research is different.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing. AI, you put something into to Copilot or other GPTs are available, but you put stuff into there. That's not the answer. That is part of your process. That's just a tool that's helping
Part of
you
the process. But
gather
you're
that
not going
stuff
to be able
together.
to cite that because it's not even a tertiary source. It's
It's
something
so far down the chain.
it's so
You'd have to
far,
start
and
using
and
Greek
that's a
letters.
great start. It's like a horizontal view, perhaps. If you're asking really good questions, it can collect sources that you might not have found otherwise, and that could be really good. But it's about the sources it surfaces, not the things that it says about them necessarily, in my opinion, when it comes to the research process. And so these skills, taking what your AI surfaces and then going straight over your traditional search engine and navigating that space, which is the space that we're introducing students through this is kind of what our goal is.
Checking it out for yourself as well. Double
You got
checking.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
double checking.
brilliant.
It's as simple as that. You got to double check.
So, can you tell us? Are you allowed to tell us what things are in the pipeline next for search and some of the other learning accelerators, if you know about those things?
I do indeed. I've got the spoiler alert math logo in my background here today. For search, the focus right now is we've built out this core product. We want to make it as easy as possible for people to bring this into their classrooms. And so we're working with Dr. Sam Weinberg and Dr. Joel Breakstone and their whole team at the Digital Inquiry Group to put curriculum lesson plans together to make Search Coach in Progress easier to use in the classroom. So stay tuned for those. I can share a link you can put in the comments or something afterwards if that
Yeah,
helps.
we will do. We'll
So
include that
that's
somewhere.
coming up. That's going to be great. And we're thinking more and more about what it means to continue to build those foundational skills that ladder up to AI literacy through the tool. And so that's always on my mind. But for the moment, the big focus is math progress is heading into private preview in the coming weeks. Speaker progress is also right along with it in terms of private preview, and we can make sure that we connect all of your listeners to those opportunities if they're interested. And math coach. So the new standalone reading coach, which is outside of Teams, is going to have a sibling, and it's going to be about math. And I was tapped to sort of work and co-lead that project, and so I'm very excited to be doing that as well. But search will always be my original project, and I'm going to keep championing it as long as I can.
Fantastic. And that is how it works in Microsoft, isn't it? You don't kind of like, oh, I'm not doing that anymore now. You always
you
keep hold
you
of
always
your
keep hold of
project.
it. Yeah, 100%. And I think that's kind of what's special about it. I spent so long on these tools. It's nice to now get to see them through and watch them grow up and do things like this and sort of tell the story of why it is that we built what we did.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for coming to tell us that story today about Search Coach, and hopefully we'll be able to have you back on at some point to talk about some of the changes in Maths Coach, and also when those teaching materials come out for Search Coach as well. If you could come and tell us about those.
It would be my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Darren.